Look at me, I'm finally recording book club. I was having some issues this past week, and so I did not get book club recorded to post on Wednesday. So it was a rough week. So I'm recording it today, so it's late. Book club that we're going to be talking about is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Hopefully I said that right. I did want to say next month, March is book club. Lord of the Flies. That's what we're going to be reading in March. So, yay, I'm very excited about this. And I actually ordered the DVD movie because I haven't watched it since I was a kid, like a teenager probably. So, I'm going to read the book and then I'm going to watch the movie before next month's podcast. So I'm super excited about that one because I haven't watched that since I was a kid. Of course, my neighbors are going to start to mow. Okay, so Brave New World. I got this book because it was on Charlie Kirk's favorite books that were going around on Instagram for a while after he passed away. And so it is a classic. It just has never been on my radar, never been something that I wanted to read. And quite honestly, my overall is kind of like, I mean, I understand like the fear and also some of the comfort of a world like this. So I do want to talk about that. And down the road, probably later this year, I want to read, which I started it a while back and I never finished it, 1984 by George Orwell, and I want to kind of do a comparison of, there's my kitty, Cuddy, a comparison of Brave New World and George Orwell. But I did read this one. It's not my favorite, book, but it was interesting, and so I wanted to kind of talk about some of I looked up like some topics of like what to talk about with a book club. First of all, Brave New World, it was written in 1932, which is crazy because thinking about like some of the things that have changed since then and how we've kind of, like got into like IVF, which is helpful for people who are struggling. But like that's sort of in the book. Like you're creating cloning and stuff like that. Like, so it was written in 1932, so it's kind of crazy that it's kind of still scary about that. So it's a futuristic society where humans are genetically engineered and socially conditioned and kept docile with a drug called Soma. Now I found that one interesting that they had to, so that just kind of proves, I think, that without that drug, without them being able to like crash out and take that Soma and kind of go to another world, they just basically sleep when they're on it. It just proves that the world is not, that society is not, could not withstand, like it wouldn't withhold or withstand without that drug keeping them docile. So which means that it's not a good society or a good world. It would crumble. So I found it fascinating. So the genetically engineered, socially conditioned. So basically they're raised with they sleep and they have things like telling them what they are, and they're also like cloned from. So if you're like a lower worker, they just keep cloning that person because they're good at that, and then they raise that person to be like a lower worker to stick. So there is no rising up. Like there would be no like, oh, this person got famous because they had a viral TikTok or viral YouTube video. Like there would be none of that because there is no getting rich. Like what you are is what you are. There is no like moving up in the world, moving out of your station. So that's kind of interesting. Soma I found fascinating. I kind of, when I was doing the book and I was taking notes, I was like, Soma equals like social media, drugs, alcohol, reality TV. Like, it's not just, I mean, we have it now. We have drugs and alcohol and social media, and where people just kind of check out. And it's not like I mean, I guess heroin, but that kills you. It can't kill you, but like, or morphine or something like that would be probably the closest thing that I would think would be to Soma that I could think of that kind of puts people in, I mean, and eventually, I don't know. It was just, there were some things that I like the structure because I really like, I really like the structure of a world. Like, I really struggle with the chaos in the world, or like when I have like my days planned, and I wasn't like this when I was younger. I was just like, psh, but I was also very anxious and depressed, and I drank, and I smoked cigarettes, and so I wasn't well balanced. And now I really like things to be structured, and maybe that comes with age and maturity, but I also think it comes with like just planning, and I don't like drink or do drugs or anything like that. So I just kind of, I like my days to be structured. So I did kind of like at the beginning of it when they were talking about kind of the structure of the day. But you also like, so one of the topics in the book club group was freedom versus happiness. And so like there's no suffering, there's no war, there's no poverty, but there's also no individual freedoms or authentic emotions. So all the all the chaos in the world, it's not there, and there's no war and there's no poverty. And so that seems comforting, but like you have to weigh the pros and cons. Is it one or the other? Do you have to have freedom or happiness? Is there a way to have both without such a controlled world? I don't know. I mean, I think that you have to, I don't think freedom and happiness are necessarily opposites either. So, I don't know. There are some things that were appealing in this world, and there are some things that were freaking terrifying. And it wasn't all like, there were the like savages who lived off, in their own, like how the old people lived, but they also lived in like dirt poor poverty and stuff like that. So it wasn't like it was the whole world that was like this. There was still that group of savages who lived like the old way. And then also they talked about sending, when people were misbehaving or they weren't taking their Soma and they were starting to think differently, they sent them off to like Iceland or something. So like it wasn't like the world was perfect and this was how the entire world was. There were like the savages who lived like in poverty. So there was technically poverty because they lived, and then there was getting, not following, not conforming, and getting sent off to Iceland. So it wasn't like a perfect world. It was just like a small creation of a perfect world. So another thing was tech and control. It's a stable society, so it's, there's not war, everything's stable, everybody gets up, everybody does their job, everybody goes home, everybody has sex with everybody else. Like there's no like mother, father, we're gonna get married and we're going to have this nuclear family. There's none of that. It's all like basically people living their entire life like they're young and in their 20s, but like with no morals, because they basically have each other, and there's no like relationship or anything like that. So it's a soulless society, kind of. So there is stability, but it's like soulless and there's no emotion. So, it's like it's sort of a robot. Like they're kind of like created more in the form of a robot than an actual human. Genetic engineering, psychological conditioning, where they're like, from when they're young, they're having, like when they're napping or sleeping, they have this like thing that's like saying things to it, based on their station in life. If they're a lower station or if they're a higher station, they have a different, conditioning that's going on when they're sleeping. What else? They're conditioned to consume. So when they go to like the savage area, they're talking like, I think he has like, does he have holes in his shoes or something? I don't remember. And he's like, the boys made fun of him because he had holes in his shoes, I think. And so the guy that was from like the main part, he was like, well, why don't you just get a new pair? And he's like, didn't have, the money or whatever. And he was talking about getting them repaired, and they were like, well, where we live, we just throw things away and get a new thing. So there was a lot of like, they were conditioned to constantly consume and like sort of like the world is now, like where you're constantly having advertisements thrown at you, and you're constantly wanting what all the celebrities have. You want their extensions, you want their facials, you want their vitamins and their energy drinks or whatever. That's just constantly being thrown at you. So there is no like deep connections to other people. There's no like emotion. There's no emotional connection to anyone but yourself, because you're only living to do what you were created to do and yourself. So like if you want to go bang Bob, you go bang Bob. If you want to go bang Harry, you go bang Harry. And then, there is no like nuclear family, like I said. So there's no identity or individuality. And I think a lot of people would struggle with that. But it's like individuality or stability. And so there has to be a balance there, but there is not, like, it's just totally like stability. There is no individuality. I can't say that. Okay. There's also no art and literature. Like they call the Bible like old writings. They called Shakespeare like too emotional, too tragic. Like people don't understand that because there is no tragedy in the world now. There is no, there, like in the Bible, it's just like, it was considered just like an old book that like no one can relate to. And same with Shakespeare. One of the I think the Savage was reading Shakespeare. Someone brought him a Shakespeare book or something, and they're like, no one could relate to that in the world because they don't understand what tragedy is. They don't understand extreme emotions or passion. There is no passion. And like when you're younger, like there's so much. That's what's weird, is like they live like they're in their, like their entire life is lived like they're, like 22-year-olds or whatever, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds. But there is no like that, there's not that passion that you had like when you were like 19, 20, 21, 22. Like, how like emotional you were, how like crazy everything was, so extreme. You were coming out of high school where everything was like the end of the world. So there is none of that. So it's really a weird world. But it was, it was like the extreme of it, instead of just being kind of, you either have to be extreme of chaos or extreme of stability. Like, I think we have to learn to kind of live in the balance somehow. So one of the questions was, what was the initial reaction? Okay, so some of the questions for the book club that I found were, what was your initial reaction to World State? Did any aspect seem appealing? And like I said, I like routine and stability now. I don't know if it's just my age or if I just had too much chaos in my younger life that I need that control as much. I need to control what I can control now. So that part of it I liked, but the other parts of it, like, what if I want to read the Bible? What if I want to read Shakespeare? What if I want to read, like, basically anything anyone read was like manuals on how to do their job. And that's it. There was no other, you couldn't learn other subjects either. Like, it was what you were created for. You were genetically created to do this job, and so that's all you need to know. There was no like crossing over of like, well, I want to learn Maggie's job. Like, I want to read her manual and learn what she does. Like, there was none of that, and there didn't seem to really be any desire to do that. And there also was any extreme emotion. Anytime someone was like, I feel like kids have this now because I don't know if they've been so coddled or like so cut off, but I feel like younger people will say, well, like, they can't handle extreme like stress, or they're like, whereas like I feel like my entire young life was that way. But now they're like, well, I don't have to, I can't handle that, I can't deal with that, and they just cut things off. Like, they don't know how to deal with feeling overwhelmed and extreme stress. And so I feel the world is kind of like that. Like, they're not tough. Like, they're not tough. I mean, there are kids who are tough. They're raised by like my generation, because if my generation kind of half raised our kids like we were raised and half tried to raise our kids like we wanted to be raised. So I feel like some of like Gen X kids are tough, but there is like this generation that's coming up after them, like I guess the millennials raised, where they're kind of, they just don't know how to deal with the world. And they just don't try. They don't try to deal with, like, oh, this makes me feel uncomfortable, I can't do it. Like, the world is uncomfortable. That your entire life is uncomfortable if you can't live like that. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, when your parents who have coddled you your entire life, what are you gonna do when they die? I mean, that is going to happen. It sucks. Okay, it freaking sucks. Your parents die, and then you're just like, you're not protected from the world. You're not coddled. There's no going home. There's no, like, so like I don't understand this generation of these kids coming up who just cannot deal with any kind of conflict or emotion or uncomfortableness. Like, they're gonna get their ass kicked later on. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But life is gonna kick them harder, and I think that is why the rate of unaliving is a lot higher, or the rate of mass shootings. It's they don't know what to do, how to like self-soothe, that kind of thing. So I don't know, I got off on a rant that's not even about this book, but in the book, when people can't deal with something or something is overwhelming, they basically take Soma and crash out until they're like, I guess, regulated, and then they wake back up, and then they're like, oh, I'm back in my world again. So they don't really have to deal with anything extreme, because if things come on, they just take Selma and crash out. So I didn't really identify with any of the characters. Maybe the Helmholtz guy who ended up deciding he wanted to go to Iceland later on, because he just was like, yeah, I think I want to do that. He was maybe the most normal. He didn't really believe what some of the savage guy said, he was like, what? He thought it was, but then later on he was just kind of like, yeah, I don't fit in here. And so he wanted to go to Iceland also. So I would say maybe him, Helmholtz. Bernard was just a little bit too far out, further out than Helmholtz. Lenina, no. John, no. John was the savage who came back with them. No. Was I surprised by anything that it was written in 1932? I actually was really surprised at how kind of on the nose of the way things are headed, that it could be that could be something. So it seems really long ago of 1932 that was written, to be able to see a future that's getting closer and closer to that kind of world. In World States, elimination of suffering and conflict with price. Would you want to live there? No. I mean, I think that even though I like stability and I like, things, routine and stuff now, I think you have to learn how to live through tragedy and suffering, and that people are just people. And I think people should be allowed to be who they are and not just continually cloned over and over and over again to do a job for a government or state or whatever. Mustafa states happiness and stability are more important than truth and freedom. I don't think that they're opposites. Happiness and stability are more important than truth and freedom. I don't think that happiness and stability are opposite of truth and freedom. I think they can all be combined together to come. And it says John wants the right to be unhappy. And what does that mean? And do you agree? I do agree. I think that you have to. I don't think that any of the people in the world state appreciated the goodness of it because they never had any bad. Like you cannot appreciate or be grateful for how wonderful things are in a moment, or how blessed you are in a moment, if things have never been on fire, if things have never been chaotic, if things have never fallen apart, if you haven't experienced loss or tragedy. I don't think you can fully appreciate that higher emotion if you haven't experienced the lower emotion. I think they're incapable of it. And so their entire life is kind of a monotone. Bueller, like it's just, it is stable, but is it really a life? Or is it just like a machine? Can a life without suffering challenge or authenticate emotional? I can't even read my own handwriting. I don't think that you can have a life. I don't think you fully have a life if you don't have the full range of emotions, or fully able to experience everything in life, because you can't appreciate. And that was most important takeaway, is like I don't think that you can fully have a full life if you don't experience the crap, because you will never appreciate the wonder. So that's kind of my takeaway. Would I recommend this book? I mean, I guess like it's a classic. Like I think it should be something that you have read and understood and kind of, went through. It's not really my thing. I'm not big on like machine and all that stuff. That's why I think that I ended up putting down 1984 when I started it, because I was just kind of like, the eye is watching, but I do want to get back and read that one, start over and read that one again, and then I want to kind of do a comparative between 1984 and Brave New World. Even though they aren't really my bag, they're both classics, and so I really want to, I feel like you should just read them. They're classics for a reason, or they would just be some book that nobody talks about anymore. But because they're continually talked about, I feel like they're important to read. So yes, I would probably say, hey, but I think I would also recommend that they read both Brave New World and 1984, which I will do later this year. Will do if you want to do the book club. So that's it. That's book club. I would really love to down the road start being able to just do a live. I think you have to have a certain amount of followers on YouTube. I thought about maybe recording, like my normal YouTube video and doing a live on Instagram for a book club. I'm just really not sure. I would really like to kind of leave book club and the podcast on YouTube and not kind of cross them. I mean, I do like post my book club and stuff on my Instagram, but I really would like to do live book clubs if I had enough people who were reading along with me, where we could have like a live conversation about it. I think that would be really interesting, as opposed to just me reading the book and going through like this list of stuff that I've pulled from like book club topics and that kind of thing. So I would love to start doing that in the future if I get enough followers or enough like people who would be interested in getting on a live and kind of having a conversation about it. So that is kind of my goal for the future of book club. And probably I'm going to be sticking to classics definitely for this year, 2026, probably 2027 too, because there's a lot of classics, and plus some of them are big fatties, and so I think I'm going to have to maybe have some of them read over 2 or 3 months, just because they're such big books, so they're going to take a lot more time. So I'm probably going to do classic. I'm definitely doing classics for 2026, most likely for 2027 also. Who knows what 2028. I eventually would like to get done with a lot of the classics, or if I get kind of tired of that and want to kind of change it up. I have a whole bunch of books on Rome, the Roman Empire, and I really want to dive back into that. I started kind of reading some, and so I really want to get back into reading those. I also want to go back to, I have like 4 books to finish on the Iliad, and I want to read, I may do the Odyssey and what's the other one? Aeneid, Aeneid. That's the one that's after the Odyssey. That's the guy that actually goes to Rome and starts Rome, I believe. Aeneid is the one he's like one of the only people that got out of the Trojan War alive from the other side. Not Greece, but Trojans, the Trojans? Yeah. And so he left that country and went, and I think he started Rome or something. I think that's what the Aeneid is about. But I really want to read the Odyssey. I just won't start it until I finish the last 4 books of the Iliad, and I just haven't done it. I also want to finish, what is it? It's the 3 books. The Inferno, I can't think of what the name is, but I started that, but I'd like to read that too. But I don't know if I would include that in classics or if I would include that in kind of like the Roman Empire stuff. So I definitely want to get back to those books. I have a whole bookshelf that's just like, Iliad, Odyssey, Aeneid, I don't know if that's the right word. And then like the Roman Empire, like the Caesars, I have a whole bookshelf of just about Rome, and so I really want to get into that eventually. So I'm definitely doing classics for the rest of this month or this year. I may do classics all of next year, or I may jump to Rome next year and then go back to classics the following year. I don't know. I have so many books to read. I feel like this is just going to help me at least read more of the ones that I want to read, but I keep kind of like pushing them to the side because like some new fantasy will come out and I'm like, oh, I gotta read this new fantasy. And I do have a handful of those too. I still need to finish the Throne of Glass. I think I have 3 books left. I want to read the Fourth Wing series. I want to read, there's a whole bunch of series that I have that I want to read. So there's just so much to read. But the classics I want to read for book club, and I really want to stick to that. So yeah, so we're gonna stick to classics for at least the rest of 2026. And I'm kind of doing smaller books this first little bit because I'm starting a new workout thing from now until middle of May. So I'm kind of been picking some smaller ones, but once I get done with that, I'm gonna pick up some fatter ones, and they'll probably be like a month or two long reading. Instead of just trying to read it in a month, we may push them to like maybe the first half 1 month and the second half, or maybe split it up into thirds and take 3 months to read it. Because some of the old classics, man, they are thick books and they are teeny tiny writing, so they loved their storytelling, but they're classics for a reason. So I really want to read some of the fat ones too. I have like the Count of Monte Cristo, the Brothers Karamazov, whatever that book is. It's a famous one. I really want to read that, but it's like Crime and Punishment. It's a big one. War and Peace is a big fatty. So I really want to read some of the bigger ones, but I'm getting into the book club and starting this out. I just kind of thought, well, I'm going to start with some smaller ones to kind of ease into it. So Brave New World is done. Yay, congratulations. We're going to start Lord of the Flies tomorrow. Actually, tomorrow is March. So thanks for watching the book club, and I will see you, next week for normal podcast, but I will see you a month to go over Lord of the Flies. And if you have a chance to watch the movie too after you read the book, do that. I'm probably gonna do some notes on the book and notes on the movie. So yay, happy book club.